Hi there, and welcome to the Okey's crochet tutorial for making your very own adorable Highland cow. I'm Haley, and I'm so excited to crochet with you today. In this video, we'll go step by step so you can follow along at your own pace. Before we dive in, the basic crochet skills or stitches you'll need for this project are a magic ring alternative, single crochet, increase, decrease, chain, and slip stitch. If you're new to any of these, don't worry, you can find quick tutorials for them right above this video on this page, or head to our crochet basics section on the tutorial page of our website. Take your time practicing before jumping in here. There's no rush. Let's take a look at everything included in your kit to make your cute little Highland cow. If you're using the Okey's crochet kit, you will be given the chenille yarn, some safety eyes, a crochet hook, yarn needle, stitch marker, and some stuffing. Now, a quick note before we get started, don't hesitate to pause or rewind anytime. You've got this. All right, let's get started. Grab your yarn and hook, and we'll begin with creating our first magic ring alternative. Go ahead and grab your vanilla cream white, and we're gonna start with the body. So we're going to start by making our magic ring alternative with 12 single crochets. So we're going to start holding the yarn in our dominant hand and the yarn in our non-dominant, or the yarn tail in our non-dominant hand. Wrap it around, and I like to kind of make an X. I find that's easiest for me to know where my hook goes and everything. And we're going to insert, and we're going to go underneath this first loop over the second loop so we can grab it and pull up a loop right there. And then we're going to go to this back one, yarn over, and we're going to pull up another loop. Now put your finger right here on this to kind of hold it in place and pull lightly on that yarn tail. Now we're just going to chain one more, so we're just going to yarn over and pull through. All right. Now, in that very first chain we did, not the one right by our hook, but this very first one, we're going to insert our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops. That's a single crochet, and we're going to do it 12 times, and you're going to go into that same loop or that same stitch every single time. So go back into that stitch, do another single crochet, 2, and just keep going until you get to 12. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's going to kind of start to look really tight because it's going to be closed. So just kind of make sure that you keep straight of where you started and where you're going to end. 8, 9. One thing you can do is take a stitch marker, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but and just kind of place it on that very first one. That way you don't lose it, and then keep going just until you get to 12 single crochets. But this way you don't forget which one is the first one. So 10, 11, 12. All right. We've already got that stitch marker in there, so let's just go on to round number 2. We're going to be doing 12 increases. So as a reminder, increases are just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we're going to go into the first stitch, which is the one with the stitch marker. Insert our hook. I'm going to do 1 single crochet and then go back into that same stitch and do another single crochet, and that's an increase. Repeat that 12 more times, or 11 more times, sorry, for a total of 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 'If your hook ever slips out of your yarn, just put it back in. If you need to restart that stitch, go for it, whatever makes it easier. 11, oops. And 12, all right. Move that stitch marker up. I like to put my stitch marker on the very first stitch of the previous round. That way I know when to stop. But you can put it, if you want to, you can put it at the last stitch of the round. Just make sure you're putting it in the same spot every single time. You're not switching between the first and the last of the round, just because then it'll start to get a little off. But another thing you can always do if you do ever get confused, just count your stitches. If you have trouble counting stitches, just go back and watch our videos. If you need to use multiple stitch markers, one for the beginning, one for the end, do whatever you need to feel comfortable. All right, round number 3, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and then an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. So we're going to start. 1, 2, 3, increase number 1, 1, 2, 3, increase number 2, 1, 2, 3, increase number 3, 1, 2, 3, increase number 4, 1, 2, 3, increase number 5, 1, 2, 3, increase number 6. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round number 4, we're going to do 4 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 6. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, round number 5, we're going to be doing 5 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase number 5, and then increase number 3. If you catch yourself messing up, or if you're not quite sure if you did enough stitches, make sure you go back and count just to double check, or if you need to pull it out until the point where you know what you did, you can do that too. You can redo the whole round, whatever you need. But if you're second guessing yourself, or if something doesn't look right, feel free to undo it. Don't worry, it's totally normal. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase, number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase, number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase, number 6. All right, move that stitch marker. And now rounds 6 through 15, we're just going to be doing 42 single crochets all the way around for all those rounds. So you're just going to single crochet around until you get done with round 15. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I like to count all my stitches the first time, especially just to, you know, make sure that I got all the correct stitch amounts in there. I'm not missing any before I get too far in and realize that I am short a stitch. So we're going to go ahead and count through the first ones, and then the second one after that, feel free to go at your own pace. But I just like to double check on the first ones. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, oops, and 42. At this point, you'll kind of start to see that your piece wants to curve. Just make sure that you curve it so the right side is facing out. So this yarn tail should be on the inside. All right. So that was round 6, and now we're just going to keep doing that until we get through round 15. Round 8, same thing. All right, round 9, same thing. Okay, round 10, same thing. Round 11, same thing. Round 12, same thing. $13, same thing. 14, same thing. All right, 15 last time, single crocheting all the way around. All right, round 16, we're going to start decreases. So we're going to start round 16, we're going to do 5 single crochets and then a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. For this project, I'm going to be using an invisible decrease, but you can do whatever kind of decrease that you feel the most comfortable with. So we're going to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, decrease. So for the invisible decrease, you're going to insert your hook into the front loop of the next stitch, and then leaving that loop on your hook, you're going to insert your hook into the front loop of the next stitch. So now you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through. Okay. Like I said, if it slips out, no big deal. All right. Okay, that was decrease number 1. Let's keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, decrease. 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 All right, round 17, we're going to be doing 4 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. One, 2, 3, 4, decrease. 1, 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 2, 3, 4, decrease. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my safety eyes right now, just because I don't want it to get too hard to get the safety eyes all the way in. So for the cow, the safety eyes are a little bit trickier to place. You want to make sure that you have enough room to put the nose in there. So you want to make sure your eyes are far enough apart that they can go around the nose. So you kind of try and keep them on the same round. It's kind of around rounds like 5 roughly is where it ends up being. So just kind of place them where you think looks good, and you can always adjust the nose to it later on. So I'm gonna go, so we're gonna start in the middle. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna place mine in between rounds 4 and 5, just to like kind of right there, give me enough space for the nose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. Right. So that way they're kind of just like straight across from each other. Plenty of room for a nose. All right. Go ahead and pop that back on. There we go. Sometimes they can be kind of tricky, so just do your best to get them on, and if you can't, you can always like glue them or something, but they should be pretty easy to get on. All right, let's keep going. Round 18, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, decrease, 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 1, 2, 3, decrease. All right, round 19, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat it 6 times. Before I get started on round 19 though, I'm going to stuff my cow just a little bit. We don't want to stuff them all the way full right now, just because we have no idea how full we want it, because it's not all the way done yet. So I just like to take a little bit of stuffing and just get it all the way down into the bottom. Just a little at a time. Oh, and then once you get some stuffing in there, just That way we don't have to try and shove it all through such a small hole. So this gives him a little bit of some shape. So, all right. Round 19, 2 single crochets and a decrease. 1, 2, decrease, 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 1, 2, decrease. Alrighty. Perfect. Whoops. Okay. Come on. Perfect. Alright. Round 20. We're just going to do single crochets and a decrease. So just 1 single crochet, 1 decrease. 6 times around. Single. Decrease. Single. Decrease. Single. Decrease. Single. Decrease. Single. Decrease. Single. And decrease. All right. So at this point, I'm just going to take the stitch marker out because we're just on the last round, round 21, which is just going to be decreases all the way around. So for this round, I like to just use a regular decrease. I find an invisible decrease gets too difficult to do once it gets really small. So we're just going to do some regular decreases. And then I am going to end off with a slip stitch just to secure everything in place. Whoops. Cut the yarn off. Pull it tight, and then if you needed to add more stuffing, you can. You can try and get it through the little hole, but otherwise you should be able to just kind of move it around so that your plushie is still stuffed. All right. Grab your yarn needle. And we're going to go ahead and close up this hole. So to do that, we're going to start by attaching the yarn needle, and then we're going to just put our yarn needle and we're going to put it through the front loop on all of those decreases that we just did. Just the front loops though. Right. And then as you'll go, you'll start to see the hole shrink, and then you can kind of pull on it and it'll pull tight all the way through and shrink that hole even more. So just keep going until you get all the front loops. And then we're gonna go ahead, and I just like to kind of put my yarn needle in and pull it out somewhere else on the cow's body just to really secure that yarn tail in there. Cut it off. And now you have a finished Highland cow body. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started on all the cute little, his mouth and all the cute arms and legs and horns and ears. All right, go ahead and grab your toasted almond beige yarn so we can get started on the mouth. All right, for the mouthpiece, we're gonna start our mouth by chaining 6. So this piece actually does not start with a magic ring alternative. So we're gonna chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now you should have your chain. And then starting from the hook, this loop, we're going to count back 2. So we're going to find our first stitch 1 and then go right back down to 2. In that second chain, we're going to work a lot of stitches. We're going to start with 4 single crochets. So make sure that you're working it all in, we're going to go 4, we're working around in an oval. So just make sure that you are staying on one side of the chain at first, and then you make it to the other. Don't go back and forth in a zigzag. So we're starting, and we're going to go on this side of the chain, working our way this way. 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to place a stitch marker. You can also do this just right after you make that first single crochet and just place it on that first one. That way we know where we started. All right, after you do the 4 single crochets, we should have 1 more stitch left on this side, and we're going to do 3 single crochets in that stitch. So we're going to start just first single crochet, just regular, and then we're going to go back into that same stitch that we just went in, almost like an increase stitch, but instead of just twice, we're going to do it 3 times. All right. Now, once you get to that end, you should have this entire side single crocheted, and this side should still look like the chain. So all you're gonna do is, we were working this way, across this way, So we're just gonna rotate our piece so that our hook is always on our dominant side and the stitch marker is now on our non-dominant side. And we're gonna work across the chain. All right, starting right here on this first chain. It's kind of hard to see where it is, but you just kind of have to, you can easily find it if you can kind of feel a gap. And that's where we're gonna go. And we're gonna do 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3 single crochets. And you can see it kind of starts making a little bit of an oval shape. And then once you do this first kind of part around the chain, you just keep going around and it's almost like you started with the magic ring. All right, and then to finish it off, we're just gonna do an increase. So go into that stitch, whoops, perfect, and increase. All right, now you should be back to where that stitch marker is. And we're gonna go ahead and place another stitch marker in that last one that we just completed. All right, round 3 of the mouth, we're gonna start and we're gonna go right into this where the pink stitch marker is, or where your first stitch marker is. And we're gonna do an increase. All right, and we're gonna move that stitch marker up. And because we started with an increase, we have to count back 2 single crochets, like 2 loops. That's kind of the hard part about starting with an increase. So we're gonna go 1, 2, it's right here. If you have any trouble with counting your loops, you can always go back and watch our videos, or just take it nice and slow. If you need to do the increase and do the first single crochet, place a stitch marker, and then do a second one, you totally can. Whatever you need to do to make sure that you know where you are and that you make your cow look as beautiful as it can. So definitely do what makes this easier for you. All right, so after we finish our increase, we're gonna go 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. Now we're gonna do 3 increases. So we're gonna do our first increase. So 1, 2, and 3. All right, now 3 single crochets again. 1, 2, 3. And then we're gonna end it off with an increase, or with 2 increases, sorry. So first increase, and then remember this stitch marker, so in my case, the yellow stitch marker is marking the last stitch of the round. So for the second increase, we do go in where that stitch marker is. Two, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and move my yellow stitch marker up and put it right on that last part of the increase we did. All right, now for round 4, we're just gonna do 18 single crochets. So you're just going all the way around basically. So first single crochet is worked into the pink stitch marker. So 1, 2, I'm just gonna take the pink stitch marker out because this is our last round anyways. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then our 18th one is going to go into the spot where the yellow stitch marker is. All right. Now we finished. I'm gonna go ahead and end mine off with a slip stitch. You don't have to. I just find that it secures it a little bit more, especially since we're gonna be sewing it on. Cut it off. Pull it nice and tight, and then you're gonna flip it so that this part with the yarn tail is gonna be on the inside, so that the yarn tail is kind of tucked in like that. And there you have the cow's mouth. All right, for the ears, we're still gonna work with the vanilla cream white. And we're gonna start by creating our magic ring alternative. And we're gonna do 6 single crochets for the magic ring alternative. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, and then we're going to chain 1, and then we're just going to do 6 increases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I like to finish off just with a slip stitch and leave a little tail. Alright, now you have one little ear. Go ahead and make a second. Magic ring alternative. Six single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, chain 1, and then 6 increases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, again, end with a slip stitch. Alrighty. Next, we're going to do the tail. So we're going to start with our magic ring alternative. And we're going to do 5 single crochets in this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for all the rounds up to round 8, we're going to be doing 5 single crochets. So really you're just single crocheting all the way around just until you feel like your tail is as long as you want it. So not too bad. So I'm just going to do a bunch of single crochets all the way around. It's going to get real small real fast, so just make sure that you flip it as soon as you can to be able to make sure that you're working with the right side of crochet and make sure that your tail is going to look as best as it will. So I usually like to do at least the first round and then try and flip it, and then if I can't, you can use your hook to kind of help, or you can just keep it with the wrong side out. It won't look as good, but if you really can't flip it, then it's totally fine. So I'm struggling a little, but I will show you what I do. So all I do to flip it is I just insert my hook into the middle. I come out where this is, grab the little yarn tail with my hook and pull it through, and then you just kind of pull on it and it helps you flip it over, so it's super easy that way. And then you get it flipped, and then at the end you'll tuck this back in with your yarn hook. But I'm going to leave it out just for a little bit so that it's not in my way, because I already have such a little spot to work with in the middle. So it's kind of hard to hold, so just do your very best. But you're just single crocheting around, nothing too difficult, so just take your time. Make sure you're going in every single stitch. You got it. Alright, once you feel like you've got your tail the length you want it to be, you're going to go ahead and do some single crochets right across the top. Just do like 1 or 2. Should be enough to close it up. or even one, and then a little slip stitch just on the end. And then don't forget to kind of pull that yarn tail through. So just insert your hook, pull it through. And I'm just going to kind of pull it up into there. I'm not going to necessarily pull it all the way through. And then I'm just going to cut it off. There we go. I took some of the tail with it, so it shrunk the size of the tail. All right. Tail is done. Let's go ahead and do the horns, which we are still using the vanilla white cream. So we're going to do our magic ring alternative. And then we're going to do 4 single crochets in it this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now we're going to do 4 single crochets around again. And I find that the horns get really hard to work with a stitch marker, so I like to just make sure I count what I'm doing and just make sure that I do everything, just because it gets really small. If you're trying to use a stitch marker, it gets really hard, but feel free to do so. All right, 4 single crochets, and now we're going to do 4 increases. The increases get especially hard to make sure that you go into the same stitch twice, just because you can't see it super well, so. Four increases. All right, round 4, we're going to do 2 increases to start. So 1, and 2, and then we're going to do a single crochet. Now the kind of tricky part is now we're going to do 2 decreases. So because it's so small, I'm just doing regular decreases on these ones. So we're going to just do 1, 2, and then we're going to do another single crochet to end it off. All right. Round 5, we're just going to single crochet around for a total of 8 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. I keep trying to flip it after every round just to see at some point it'll be easier to flip it. You want to try and do it before you get too much, or else it's going to be even harder to flip. So Definitely use your stitch marker if you can. It'll be or your crochet hook if you can. It'll be very helpful in flipping it. All right. Round 6. We're going to start with 2 increases. So 1, 2, then we're going to do a single crochet, 2 decreases, 1, 2, and a single crochet. Round 7, 8 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, round 8, 2 increases. So 1, 2, single crochet, 2 decreases, 1, 2, and a single. All right, and then 8 single crochets around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and I like to finish mine off just with a slip stitch. And you'll see the horn has a bit of a natural curve to it. That's what we want. We want it to kind of curve a little bit. All right, let's make a second horn. Four single crochets in our magic ring alternative. One, 2, 3, 4. 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to try and flip it right now before I get too far. Alrighty. Four increases. One, 2, 3, round 4, 2 increases to start. 1, 2, single crochet, 2 decreases, 1, 2, single crochet. Okay, 8 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, start round 6 with 2 increases. 1, 2, single crochet, 2 decreases, 1, 2, single crochet. All right. Round 7, 8 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 increases to start round 8. 1, 2, single, 1 decrease, 2 decrease, single, right, and final round. 8 single crochets around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Finish with a slip stitch. All right. Now we have both of our horns done. Time to move on to the legs. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and make the legs. So to start on our legs, we're just gonna start with our magic ring alternative. And then we're gonna be doing 10 single crochets in that second ring from the hook. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. All right, and then we're just gonna do 2 rounds of single crochets all the way around. So 10 around and then another 10. I'm not gonna use a stitch marker. Again, it gets really hard when they get this little. So just, if you're not using a stitch marker, just make sure you're counting your stitches so that you don't get too small or too big for the legs. So let's get started. We're just gonna start here. Oops. Start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then one more time around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we're just going to finish it off with a slip stitch, leaving a nice long yarn tail so that we can sew it on. All right, and then just make sure that you flip your little leg. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and make 4 of these, just the exact same way. All right, once you have all the legs done, it is time to start on the hair. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna take the Toasted Almond Beige yarn, and you are going to cut 10-inch strands. So they're just 10 inches long. And I do 102 strands of hair on my cow. So if you want less hairs or if you want more hairs, cut as many as you want. And you can even cut as you go. You can like cut like 50 and then you can go from there. But I have all of mine pre-cut. So you guys are gonna have to go ahead and cut yours. So pause the video, take a few moments to cut your yarn, and then come right back so we can get sewing it on our cow. All right, now before we start sewing all the hairs on, we are going to sew all of the parts onto the cow first, at least the horns and the ears, just so that we can kind of see where we are going to put our pieces of hair. So grab your yarn needle and grab the horns and the ears so that we can get going. The legs you can sew on afterwards and the tail, but definitely want the horns and the ears on in order to do it. Otherwise you're gonna put the hair on and you're gonna have to sew the ears and horns and stuff on top of hair. So we're gonna start with the horns, just because I find that they're a little easier to do, a little easier to space out than doing the ears first and then trying to fit horns in between the ears. So we're gonna take our first horn, and I kind of like my horns to sit like straight up from the eye. Because the ears, when you add the ears on, they're gonna go a little more at eye level, and the horns are gonna go above. So I think I'm gonna start my horn, and you can see that the horn kind of has a natural curve to it. So make sure that you sew it on so that the curve is going inwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew it kind of right there on my cow. And I usually go back about that far, like 5 or 6 stitches back. I'm actually gonna go a couple forward. I think I want mine a little closer. Well, let's go back one. I'm gonna do this one right here. So we're going, if you're kind of counting from the eyes, like you're going about 6 stitches back from the eye, or 6 rounds back from the eyes. So just kind of do it wherever you want though, however far you want it. Doesn't matter which horn you do first, just make sure that you do one of them and then you space the other one evenly apart from the eyes. So go ahead and sew it on. All right. And then once I finish, I like to just stick my yarn needle in like right next to the horn, but then pull it out somewhere else on the cow's body just to kind of really secure that horn on there. Go ahead and cut the yarn tail. Now let's go ahead and do the other horn, just so that we have both horns done, and then it'll be a little easier to space out the ears. And then once we get the horns and the ears on, we're gonna do the hair. After doing the hair, you can do the mouth, you can do the tail and the legs, or you can do all of those before the hair. It kind of is up to you. It doesn't really matter what you do first. It just depends on how you want your cow to look. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get this second one on. Again, remember, find the curve of the horn and go with that. So wherever that is, just make sure that you sew it on so that the curve is going in towards the eyes, or towards the other horn. They're going in towards each other. If you accidentally sew it on wrong, don't worry, you can always cut the yarn that's stitching it together and you can re-stitch it. Just tie a little knot with some new yarn and attach them on. You can kind of shape them too, so if it's like just the slightest bit off, you may not need to completely re-sew them, but it's totally up to you on how you're feeling, on your skills. If you feel like you're confident enough that you can completely re-sew them on, you can. If not, no big deal. Just kind of try and shape it. Use your needle to kind of pull certain parts in more. Kind of use your needle to your advantage. So, all right. Remember, stick it in near the horn and pull it out somewhere else. All right. Now we have both horns on. We're just gonna hurry and get the ears on. That way we can get to the fun part, which is the hair. my personal favorite part of the cow. So when I'm sewing my ears, I like them to kind of be a little more closed. I don't like them to be completely open because that's not really how a cow's ears are. So the first thing I'm gonna do is kind of hide this yarn tail. So I'm just gonna take my hook and insert it, like here's the center hole. I inserted it somewhere else. And I'm just gonna pull it through. And I'm just gonna do that a couple of times, just random places kind of throughout the middle of the ear. And just kind of weave it through a couple of times before I completely sew the ear on, just so that it looks a little nicer. Just like once or twice does the trick. I accidentally went in a hole that had, but the yarn came through, so I had to redo mine. You can even go up to the top where those last single crochets are and just use those to your advantage and kind of wrap it around those single crochets because it'll kind of blend in really nicely up there. So I like to definitely wrap it around those a couple of times. All right. Once you have the yarn tail weaved through, grab your cow. So when I'm sewing it on, I'm gonna kind of sew it a little pinched at the bottom. So it looks like that. So what I'm gonna do before I even start sewing it on the cow, I'm gonna put my yarn needle through the 2 single crochets right next to where my yarn tail attaches and just pull it through. That way it kind of closes up the end a little so we get that shape. Then we're gonna go ahead and sew it on right underneath the ear, or the horn. This is the ear. So I'm gonna sew it on like about you're gonna skip a stitch and then sew it on, and then make sure it's flipped the right way. And then we're gonna go back in with our yarn needle and we're gonna go back into that single crochet right next to our yarn tail. And we're gonna sew it on, stick it through right by the ear and come out right by the ear as well. Go in through that single crochet, pull it tight, go in right by the ear, come out somewhere else. Now your ear is on. Do the same thing for the other ear. So like I said, just kind of start with making sure that your piece is flipped the right way. Pull this and weave it through a few times. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a couple times so it's not going to come like unwound and you're not really going to be able to see it. Cut it off. Attach it to your yarn needle so that we can sew it on. And then remember, find where that yarn needle is attached. Go through the single crochets right next to it. Again, that just kind of gives it that like teardrop shape. And then we're gonna sew it in the exact same place over here. So remember, skip a stitch before sewing it on. And then we're just gonna sew it through that first single crochet by the ear, put it in right by the horn, pull it out over there, and then put it back through that first single crochet, put it into the cow, pull it out somewhere else. All right, go ahead and cut it off. Now we are able to start on the hair. All right, so with the hair, you're gonna use your crochet hook, not your needle. And you first kind of want to look at your cow and decide where you want to start the hair. I normally like to start it right going in between the two horns because I know I want hair right there. You are totally able to put the hair wherever on the cow you want. You do not have to follow where I'm putting the hair. I'm going to show you how to attach a few of them, and then you are able to put them wherever you want. And then I will show you at the end where I put my hairs, and then you can decide if you want them there, if you want them somewhere else. Anyway, so to start, you're gonna insert your hook and then pull it right back up. Fold your strand in half. Grab the looped end of your thing, pull it through, and then you're gonna grab both tails over here and loop it through. So essentially you're creating like a slip knot to attach it. And then we're just gonna do that. I'm gonna follow all the way around on a row, and we're just gonna keep going, attaching those hairs. And we're just gonna keep going all the way across. And then one thing that I like to do, because you'll get these little gaps, especially as you start filling in the other rows, is I was kind of angling my hook towards my non-dominant hand as I was inserting it to all these. So now I'm going to rotate the cow and almost go diagonal to that. And then add more. So it's going to kind of overlap. But then when you tighten it, you no longer have a gap. So we're going to do that. And you're just, as you fill in your cow, the first time I ever made one of these, I didn't know that I needed to fill in gaps. So I just kind of kept going row by row, filled in the whole entire thing, and then realized the gaps and had to go back through. So either way, you can do it however you want. What I suggest is that you start by just kind of getting a good idea of where you want your hair first. The reason I'm doubling up right here is because I know I'm gonna want a lot of hair up here because this is the top, and half of these hairs are gonna be kind of being parted and going forward for the front, and some are gonna be going back. So that's another reason why I like to double up right there, so you don't have like an obvious part. So it can be styled however you want. But definitely get a little base going with like a rectangle area of where you want to place the hairs on the cow, and just work from that center piece out. Don't start out here because you have no idea where you're gonna end up. Start in your center, work your way out. If you need to cut more, you can cut more. And then once you have all your hairs attached, that's when we're gonna give our cow a haircut. We're not gonna cut any of these off before we get them all attached, because we wanna know where the hairs are gonna be falling and all those sorts of things. So, and if you know how to do that knot, you're golden. You can easily attach the hairs to any stitches you want on them. You can attach them on the creases of the horns, the ears, go wherever you want hair to be, you can put hair. So go ahead and just start attaching the hairs and come back when you get all of yours done. So once you added all of your hair to the cow, you can go ahead and give her a haircut. You can cut it however you want. I just kind of cut mine shorter, obviously, where the eyes are, and then I just stuck some hair. So you can see I've got hairs going all the way back here. I've got some going on the sides of the ears and the horns. So it's totally just where you want your hair, how long you want it, all those things. So just kind of use your creativity there to kind of make your own unique cow. So after you get the hair done, it is time to sew on all 4 legs, the tail, and the mouth. You can do the legs before the hair if you want to kind of give it something to stand on, but you don't have to. I'm going to start with the legs just to kind of help with positioning everything else. All right, so where I like to put the legs is I like to kind of put it in like a little square on the bottom. Just kind of where we did all those single crochets. That's where I like to have them, not anywhere over here. So we're going to start our first one kind of right here. And I just kind of get it attached first to the body, like 1 stitch. And then as you go around, obviously you can kind of manipulate where the legs are based on how you sew it. So I like to kind of hold it in place and just sew like according to that. I try not to move the leg off of the place that I want it, just kind of helps me keep it in place, at least while I get the first like half done, so that I can kind of see where I'm going. Once I have a couple stitches in place, then it starts to, obviously then it can't move as much, so then you can kind of take it off. Move it a little. I just like it to stay in place at first so that I'm not accidentally sewing it in the wrong spot. The first one's the hardest, just because you don't know where you're gonna put them. After you do the first one, you base the others off of where you put the first one, so it's a little bit easier to sew them on or to decide on the placement. But for the first one, you just kind of have to use your best judgment and hold it in place while you sew it. If you need to, you could take a yarn needle and like stick it through like that to kind of help hold it in place. But it's definitely helpful to do something to keep it in place or to remember where you're sewing it. And then after that first one, it's really easy to sew the others on. So all right, and then on that last stitch, stick it in and then just kind of pull it out some random part on the body and cut it off. Now you have 1 leg on the cow. So after you do the first leg, it's fairly simple to put all the other legs on. Like I said, I like to kind of make a little square, so when I'm doing this one, I like to kind of go to the back first because I need the front 2 to kind of be even spacing with each other and with the back. Do it in whatever order feels right for you though. So I'm gonna go ahead, and they kind of go really close together because the body of the cow is not very big. So they end up being really close together, which is totally fine. So again, I just do that first stitch, get it attached, and then I just kind of set it where I want it. Make sure I'm holding it with 1 finger. or sticking something in it like a yarn needle or a crochet hook or something to keep it in place while I do the first few stitches. I just like to do that just to make sure that I'm getting it in the right spot, and that way I don't have to go back and redo any sewing. And then once you get the first few stitches done and you feel comfortable just going on your own, just sew it on. And with each leg, the sewing gets easier. You kind of figure out a method of how you're sewing the legs on. So, but each cow is unique, so don't worry if yours looks different than mine. You can totally do whatever you want with your cow. And I'm not adding any stuffing to the legs. I just kind of put some yarn tails. I put the yarn tail from the beginning of the round in there. Otherwise, I'm not stuffing the legs. Alright, that last stitch, same thing, just kind of make sure you pull it out somewhere to help secure it on. With the cow, it is kind of hard to sew the legs on because you've got so much going on at the top that you can't really like lay it down to sew the legs on, so just do your best. That's why I said if you want to, you can totally do them before the hair, before the horns and stuff, but for me it's easier to do them afterwards just so that I make sure that everything is even. Last leg. With the last one, it's kind of nice because you don't have to like really plan out where to put it. You just put it in line with these other two, so it's kind of nice for a second to just not have to think about where to put a piece, so. All right, now our cow has all 4 legs. We can move on to the tail, which is significantly easier than the legs. The legs are probably the hardest thing to sew on, or the mouth. But the tail is fairly easy. All we're gonna do is kind of place it so that our tail is right in that center where we finished. We want it there. And for the cow's tail, we kind of want it to stick out. We don't want to sew it straight up and like attach it up here. You can if you want, but we almost want ours to be a little more down. So I'm gonna sew it going down that way. But again, feel free to sew it however you want. This is your cow. And if you choose to sew it going up, it will kind of flop down. So if you want it up, make sure you sew it. Otherwise, you can kind of leave it loose if you want to. It kind of just is up to you on how you want your cow's tail. This is just how I'm doing it. All right. And even though I sewed mine going downwards, it still kind of sticks up a little bit. So that's just how it is. Don't be alarmed if yours is sticking up a bit. You can always sew it to keep it down, or you can just leave it like I do. And now we're on the last part, which is the mouth. So with the mouth, we want it to kind of be in between the 2 eyes. That's what we need. And we want to make sure that it stays in place as we are sewing it on. So kind of just before you start sewing, make sure you line it up and see where you want it. And then once you like it, hold it on the whole time that you're sewing it on. Just because the mouth is such a specific piece that we're sewing on, that we don't want it to kind of go crooked or anything. We want it to just be nice. So, and I don't want to have to sew it on twice because it's kind of a pain. So this just helps us do it only one time. And with the mouth, we are gonna add just a little bit of stuffing. So make sure that you leave enough space to stuff it when you're sewing. We're not gonna add much stuffing, just enough that it can kind of have a shape and not just be flat. So once you get most of it sewn on, you can kind of know where the rest of the stitches are going to go, and you can kind of let go of it a little bit. But all right, before I sew it up too much on the top half, I'm gonna add a little stuffing, and like I said, we're just adding the literal tiniest bit of stuffing just to give it. You could even add like yarn scraps if you want to, but just a little, just so that it has a shape instead of just kind of flopping there. So just tuck it in. Obviously, you can add as much as or as little as you want, but that's just what I'm doing. And then after I add a little bit, I'm just gonna keep sewing, and then if I decide when I'm almost done that I want to add a little more stuffing, I can. It's really hard to find a good way to hold the cow while you're sewing, just because it's the last piece that you're sewing on, and you've got hair, and you've got horns, and a tail, and legs, so it kind of gets a little tricky to find how to hold it, but you got this. It is kind of hard to sew it on right where we are sewing it on because it's the start, so there's a lot of stitching going on right there, just with our magic ring alternative and increases going on. So just do your very best to get it on where you want it. And if you need to add a little extra, like if you need to kind of move it around places or anything. All right. All right, now the last part of making our cute cow is going to be making the nostrils. This is a totally optional step. You do not have to do it. But basically all we're doing is sewing 2 little nostrils onto the nose. So I like to grab the black, just cut it off. We don't need a ton. So I'm just gonna take it, tie it on. All right, so to do this, I am gonna start, for the nostrils, I like to go in kind of right here where the mouth is sewn to the body. So we're gonna go there and come out kind of where we want the first nostril to start, like the top of the first nostril. Pull it through. I like to leave a little tail still. And then you're just gonna embroider it on. So how I like to do it is we're just going straight down, and we're just gonna, you can do it however long you want, like however big you want the nostrils to be. You might get a little stuffing coming out just because we stuffed the nose. But Try not to like just pull it out because it'll pull a ton of stuffing like that. Try and just trim it if you can. So, all right. And then I'm gonna just go over that same spot, like going in the same holes. And we're just gonna do that like 2 or 3 times, just to kind of get a solid little nostril right there. And then just kind of, you can just kind of trim away the stuffing, so. And then obviously we're back at the top here. So I like to go over, and we're gonna go in where the other nostrils are, or where the other ones go in, but we're gonna come out where we want the top of the other nostril to go. And then same thing, you're just gonna go down a couple of stitches. And then just go 3 times through those same loops. All right, and kind of same thing as on the other one. I'm just gonna go in through that bottom one still, and then we're gonna come out in the exact same spot that we went in, down at the bottom. Cut off the excess. I accidentally did a lot of black yarn, but you really don't need that much. All right. And then all I do with these little yarn tails is I just take them and just tie them in a knot, and because they are coming out of the same hole, that knot will disappear. And then I just take my crochet hook, pull it out of that same hole that they are in. It's kind of hard to find it because there are already things going in there. And I just use the crochet hook to kind of pull them into the body of the cow. But then you have your nostrils. If they're not perfectly even, it's fine. You can kind of move them around, move the strings around a little bit. And then obviously we kind of messed up the hair, so you can fix your hair if you want on your cow. But otherwise, we are completely done making Rita. She is so cute, so fun, so funky, and then one thing I love about her is you can do her hair however you want, so you can try some different unique ways to style this fun hair on Miss Rita. So I would absolutely love to see your finished projects, so go ahead and post them. Tag us at Okey Crochet so that I can see all of your fun creations of Rita. And we will see you guys next time.